Hello, this is U.S. Immigration Attorney Sharifa Tharpe. I'm here live to take your questions. And I'm also continuing on the theme of the week, which is how to get the work permit, ways to get the work permit. Yesterday, I talked about family relationships. Now I'm going to talk about asylum. And it's a good topic right at the it's happening at a good time. I spent the morning talking to individuals about their ability to get asylum and also to get the work permit along the way. So I'm continuing with that theme today to discuss the option of asylum. A lot of people think that to get asylum you have to have been in a well-known or famous maybe political issue or political conflict, or you have to be in some kind of war zone to be able to get asylum. And yes, that can qualify for asylum, definitely, but it also qualifies you if you are going through personally, maybe even going through going facing threats, facing danger in your country. Now I'm going to explain this to you and how asylum works. Now, in order to apply for asylum, you have to already be here, and you need to keep in mind that there is a deadline to apply. You need to apply for asylum at least 365 days after your entry into the US. Or if you're applying past that deadline, you have to show that there are some changed circumstances that maybe didn't exist before, that now exist, that where you need to apply for asylum, or that you face extraordinary circumstances that prevented you from meeting the deadline and applying on time. What we do is when we have to apply past the deadline, we do have to show this, and then they determine whether they're going to accept that and move forward with the asylum application. But once you successfully submit your asylum application, you will be issued a work permit. And the work permit, though, you have to proactively apply for the work permit. And there are some rules associated with applying for the work permit. You have to apply for the work permit starting at 150 days past the date that you applied for asylum. And then at the 180-day mark afterwards, you'll be issued the work permit. Now, how do you qualify for asylum? So you have one set of people that think there's no way I qualify for that. I have nothing to do with politics. I wasn't in a war zone. Nothing like that is happening in my country. And then you have other individuals that believe that if they face any kind of threat in their country, that they would qualify for this. So I'm going to break it down and take the mystery out of asylum for you so you understand how it works. And maybe you can relate to what I'm about to say. So you can give me a call, schedule an appointment, and we can evaluate your particular circumstances. Now, it's very broad. Whether or not you can apply for asylum is going to come down to your circumstances. However, your circumstances have to fit within this criteria. Are you afraid to return to your country because you have a credible fear of persecution, maybe based on past persecution, or you fear future persecution because a particular group that you are a part of is being threatened, or they're being in some way they're being threatened or targeted or locked up, or facing certain harms because of who they are. Now, it's usually the rule is that you have to show that you are being targeted because of your race, your ethnicity, your religion, your political affiliation, and then any particular social group that you may be a part of. Now, okay, say you don't have any religious basis. Say you don't have any political basis to apply for asylum. Say you don't have any racial issues that would lead to you applying for asylum, nor that you are being targeted based on your ethnicity. However, say you're being targeted, you yourself know that you're facing threats because you are being targeted based on a group that you belong to. Now, this group doesn't mean any group. It doesn't mean, for example, that you may be a part of a group of friends and then there's somebody on the other street that don't like the friends, so they're coming over to harass you and target you. No. What it does mean is that you're a part of a particular social group that has a common characteristic that is unchangeable. And because of that characteristic, you're being targeted. For example, if you are stigmatized or targeted in your country because of a mental illness or a mental health issue, if you are, you identify within a certain sexual orientation and that is being targeted, those group of individuals that relate to that sexual orientation are being targeted in the country. If you are, say, a part of even a family, and that family is being targeted by, say, a particular gang or a particular gang in your community, they're targeted by gang violence. That could be a particular group. Say you belong to a particular group of women who are subjected to domestic violence, and domestic violence is prevalent in the country, and there's no protection from police or government or in the laws for women who are targets of domestic violence, then that could potentially be a particular social group. For example, girls in certain countries around the world may be subjected to female circumcision. And that is considered a particular group for the purposes of asylum because it is a cruel type of ritual that is done on usually young girls, and those young girls or women could seek asylum here in the US based on being a victim of that or being a possible victim of that if they were to return to their country. So it all comes down to circumstances. And this is where we can look at your circumstances to determine whether you belong to a particular social group and whether you qualify for asylum, or if you face past persecution. When I say past persecution, you face past harm. You've been targeted in the past, and so you have a credible fear of returning to your country in the future. So, that in a nutshell is what asylum is. And I would say, don't take yourself out of, do not sit down and say, oh, that's not me. These are just examples, and you could very well qualify in other ways, just depending on what's going on in your situation. So this is where you need to call, schedule an appointment, and we can get straight to work to determine whether you qualify and get started, because remember, there's a deadline. A deadline is 365 days after your entry into the US. There are two types of asylum. There's one where you can apply, affirmatively, meaning, say, you come here, you're maybe on your visa, and you know for sure you need asylum. Then certainly you can move forward with asylum that way, as long as you meet the criteria. And then the other is if you are in immigration court already, or you've been referred to immigration court, then that's called defensive asylum, and it can be a basis to be able to get relief to stay in the United States. So now the work permit is, right now they're issuing 2-year work permits, and it is renewable for as long as you're waiting for the asylum to be processed. Asylum can take years, so your work permit is renewable for the years that it will take, and then as soon as you are approved for the asylum, you get your work permit based on the asylum. And if you've been here for a year or more, you can move on to the permanent residence process. So it does eventually lead to permanent residence and US citizenship after permanent residence. So go ahead, give us a call. We can get to work to get this done for you, as long as we can determine you qualify first. And that's the purpose of the consultation. is to make sure that you qualify for asylum. And then we get straight to work. All right. So now put your questions in the comments. I've already told you one way to get your work permit here, but I want to hear your questions. Your questions can be anything that's immigration related. It does not have to be just about asylum or the work permit. So here is your chance to ask your questions. And I see questions already. So, can a person still fly in Florida on their passport if they overstayed before July 1st? So, yes, generally, no, keep in mind that there's always a risk. The risk is never zero when it comes on to overstaying and being without status while you're traveling, especially throughout an airport. However, people have been traveling, and as long as they have their valid passport to travel throughout the United States. Now, Florida, coming into Florida, remember that the airports is run by, for the most part, the TSA, by the federal government. So they're not going to go by Florida laws. And keep in mind again that the law that's being passed here, that was passed and now it's going before the governor, it doesn't target undocumented immigrants just like that, right? So that it doesn't give anybody the authority to check your passport, and if you don't have status, to lock you up. Only ICE can lock you up based on maybe lacking your immigration status. What it does do is it targets immigrants who are not authorized to work, to make it harder for them to work and to make it very hard for employers to hire immigrants who are not authorized to work. So that's the purpose of the bill. I mean, of course, the purpose of the bill is to put fear in everyone to think exactly this, to think that, oh my gosh, they can't travel, they can't go outside, they can't do anything because there's this bill. That's the purpose of the bill, of course, is to be a intimidating tactic. However, the text of the bill targets immigrants who are not authorized to work, who go and work. It's not targeting people who are traveling in the airport. But there's another aspect of the bill you need to be careful about, though, and it's traveling into the state. If you enter the country unlawfully, and then you're traveling in with someone else, that person could face a felony charge for transporting an immigrant who came in unlawfully into the country into Florida. So that's where you have to be careful when you're traveling, but it does not target those who are walking through the airport without status. However, keep in mind that ICE they still can check immigration status, and ICE can still carry out their enforcement actions. They're separate from the state, but that's why the risk is never zero, because, ICE does have the authority to enforce separate immigration rules. And if you're traveling, you could potentially expose yourself to that. But I would say the risk is low, but the risk is never zero. All right. So if you had a visa revocation, but your spouse wants to come to Jamaica and marry you, can this work and how long will the process? He's born American. It's Yes, it's a possibility. Now where my concern would be is, what was the reason for the visa, for taking away your visa? And are there other implications involved? So is there an inadmissibility as a result of your visa being taken away from you? Are you inadmissible? Was it at the airport where they turned you around, and so now you don't you're inadmissible for 5 years? Is it that they found some sort of misrepresentation? Um, Just let me know. Has the sound returned? I am having technical difficulties on Instagram, so let me know. Someone just confirm whether the sound has returned. I can hear you on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, but on Instagram, the sound is okay. Good, good, good. All right, so it's back. Okay. That's good. I don't have to go out and come back in. So it's going to depend, but definitely you may have an option here. This is where the consultation is going to be very important because even though you do have options after a visa revocation, you want to understand what that's going to look like. Are you going to need a waiver? Are you going to so they assumed I was working the usual. So this is, and you may have a 5-year bar if you can't were trying to come in and they turned you around because they thought you were working. You may have a 5-year bar, and there may be waivers required. So this is where it's important to invest in your own process and future, and schedule that appointment to talk to me in a consultation where you can get personalized legal advice. You can do that by going to the link in the profile. And once you click the link, you'll see a button there that says schedule your own appointment, or you can go to the website, call, hi there, Shirvan, call, and our scheduling coordinator will be more than happy to assist you today to make that appointment. Thanks for the love, by the way. I appreciate it. All right. If you are on a J1 visa and you also have a B1, B2 and is currently in the US and you'd like to adjust your status after your visa expires, can your sibling who's a US citizen sponsor you? It's unlikely. The sibling, right now, for a sibling to sponsor you, it's taking 14 years. So it's very unlikely that you'd be able to maintain your J1 or your B1, B2 for 14 years necessary to adjust status, because you have to wait until they're ready to process your case, which would be 14 years from now. So a sibling wouldn't be able to do that for you. If your parent is a permanent resident and they file for their child that is over 21, are you have to be a citizen to file for your child? So your child will be included. If your parents are permanent residents, you're unmarried, and then they filed for you and you have your child will be included in the process. You just have to include them at the embassy. How can I get a T visa? So the T visa is for individuals who have been subjected to a form of labor trafficking. No, I usually like to just explain that once you hear trafficking, you think, oh no, that can't be me. But the definition of trafficking is very broad under immigration. And if you were subjected, if you were in a situation, this is how I can best describe a labor trafficking situation. You may have been working for someone, or may have even been brought here by a family member, an acquaintance. They told you one thing, or told you you'd come to work, or maybe didn't even make any promises. But when you came here, you found yourself working for them, and you found yourself being in this situation that you really didn't want to be in. Maybe you were overworked, underpaid. Maybe they took your passport. Maybe they started to mistreat you. And then you felt stuck in the situation because maybe they put fear in you. Maybe you felt like there was nowhere else to go. Maybe they told you if you left, they're going to call immigration on you. And so you may have stayed. And even if you didn't stay, you still had that fear in you. Even when you left, you had the fear of what's going to happen if you leave, because they manipulated you into thinking there are going to be some negative consequences if you left the work or left the situation. The T visa is not just for employment situations. It could be an intimate partner who had you here and then started to subject you to mistreatment, but at the same time had you doing stuff for them, like working in the house, caring for kids, especially if those kids weren't for you, working in their business, having relations with them when you didn't want to. those can also qualify you for the T visa. But the best thing you can do is don't rule yourself out until you call me and we talk about your situation. And then I determine whether you qualify, because it's really based on what you went through as an individual for me to determine whether you can qualify for this. And the T visa is another way I'll be talking about it. Let's talk about it tomorrow. It's another way to get the work permit and the green card eventually. How long does it take for you to hear back from immigration after your interview? So it depends, it can be months, it can be a day later, it could be a matter of hours. How do you know if you qualify for a T visa? So I just went over that, but what I would say here is rule of thumb. If you were in a situation where you were here, whether it's an intimate partner, a relative, an acquaintance, an employer, you felt stuck in that situation and you felt like you couldn't leave, even if you did find the courage to get out and leave, then that could potentially be a T visa qualification. But I would have to really speak with you to get the facts and determine whether you qualify and whether it's a case I'd be willing to take to apply for your T visa. Um, all right. So, talk a little about VAWA. So I spoke in detail yesterday. So when I talked about getting the work permit based on family relationships, I also talked about VAWA. But it is one of my favorite topics because it offers a valuable form of relief for individuals who are here, whether you're here without status because you crossed the border without permission, or you're here because you overstayed your visa. It qualifies you for status here. And a lot of people who are in desperate need of this relief don't know that they can do this. They can apply for VAWA. It is a type of law that's in place to help people who qualify, who to help people who are being mistreated by their U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident parent, if they're under 21, under 25 in some cases, their spouse, and their citizen son or daughter who's age 21 and up. Mistreatment varies. If you really feel like you're being treated in a cruel way, if you're being treated unfairly, if this person is toxic and manipulative, then that can count as well. If they're holding your immigration status over your head, then that can count as well. If they have ever threatened you, gotten into your space, even touched you, that can qualify you for this form of relief. It is confidential, and this relative, the spouse, the parent, the child, the point of this is not to penalize them, to call law enforcement on them or to investigate them separately. It is to make sure that you get the relief that you're taken care of in this process. So it's confidential. It's not disclosed outside of the agency, and you are in charge of your process here. You sign the papers, nobody else, and then you go through the entire process to get the green card. The work permit comes 6 to 12 months after applying, and then the green card comes about 2.5 years later. All right, so I have room for one more question. If you're seeking asylum, can you still visit the country you are seeking asylum from if the asylum is granted? Great question. No, not a good idea. Because if you are getting asylum here, you're saying it's not an option. That country is just not an option for you unless you can show that circumstances have changed in your country that make it safe for you. Maybe political conditions have changed, maybe the crime has changed, then maybe. But if you have asylum and then you're traveling to the very same country that you're telling immigration you could not go back to, then that could be open up an investigation and cause your asylum to be taken away and for you to possibly go back into proceedings. So you don't want that. Um, all right, so thanks everyone for your time. I'll be back tomorrow. We're going to talk about the T visa tomorrow. So I'll get more in depth about applying for the T visa for as a victim of trafficking. And you're going to want to hear this because your idea of what trafficking is not as narrow as you think it to be. Because I'm the your idea is probably what you see in the media. Oh, somebody got kidnapped in the parking lot of Walmart, got drugged, and was put into sex slavery. Most people have this perception of trafficking, and it does happen, yes, but there it is very broadly defined, and it involves sometimes an intimate partner, someone who you trusted that is now putting you in this situation. Maybe an employer who maybe you started out being grateful that they hired you without your papers, but now you're seeing that other side of the employer. Um, it could be a family member who promised you that they would put you in school or have you here, maybe get you a good job. And when you got here, you found yourself babysitting, being the nanny, and cleaning up the house for the relative. Things that you did not want to do, that you felt you had to do. So we'll talk about that tomorrow and talk about the relief that it offers and the benefits. The cost of the consultation is 150 for an hour. Now, my consultations are not ordinary, right? So usually with attorneys, they'll ask you like, 10 questions and then send you on your way if they don't feel you qualify. However, with my consultation, because I am evaluating all of the different options out there available for people to get their status, get their work permit, get their green card, it's a little more detailed than that. I do delve into your past. Where are you now? What are you doing? What's your circumstances that you're living under to determine what the best options are for you. So it's worth it. Your time and money is worth it. It's a good investment to be able to determine how to move forward. All right. Thanks everyone for your time. I'll be back tomorrow. Bye bye.